In an election year, the energy is tense and can feel so overwhelming. And my beautiful friend Brit Barron is here to help us navigate the waters of finding the nuance when things feel so polarized. Brit talks about her journey of leaving the church to find herself and the challenges of navigating social media and cancel culture. She shares some amazing insights of sitting with the discomfort and acknowledging our own growth and mistakes. If you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app, and my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. You guys, we have another special episode today. We have my good friend, Brit Barron on the show. What?
That's me cheering for myself.
Yes. She is an author, a speaker, a diversity trainer, two-time author now. This is exciting. And we're going to talk about all about her new book, Do You Still Talk to Grandma? And what it means. And just, you guys, just fucking get ready, okay? Because she'll fucking blow your socks off. Brit, welcome to the fucking show. Why am I dropping so much F-bombs?
I don't know, but I like it. I think this is exciting.
We're fired up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go back maybe, I don't know, 12 years? No.
Whoa.
10?
Oh my gosh, 20. I don't know.
It's been...
I feel like 10 years ago, I was 15. And that is factually untrue.
That's true. That is not true.
So many more years than that. But yeah, like, I've known each other for 10 years. At least.
Exactly.
Wow.
So how did you get to be an author? That's where I would like to start. Like, you have your first book, Worth It. That came out...
That came out July of 2020.
You guys remember that?
Yeah. Perfect time to launch a book.
Yeah.
Get rid of a living room tour.
Oh my gosh. How did you get to that point of wanting to write a book?
Yeah. Well, I am someone who has always wanted to write a book in a weird, very nerdy way. Actually, before Worth It came out, my mom sent me something. She was cleaning out the garage that she found from maybe first or second grade. And it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had on there Reverend, which, as you know, this is very relevant to my life. Book writer, writer spelled wrong, obviously. And then rider as in R-I-D-E-R, so... Like
horses.
Yeah, but I meant writer.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but, I'm just going phonetically.
Yeah.
And then the third one was veterinarian. So I'm 2 for 3 on my second grade dreams for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Because you started off as a pastor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it started out it's a lifetime ago.
A lifetime ago. Yeah.
But that's how I met you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which also feels like a lifetime ago. Like, I feel that catapulted a lot of healing, a lot of different things from that moment on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the church. The church was very much like worldview, community, everything. Went to a Christian school, worked at a different Christian school, became a pastor at a Christian church. And then, as you know, that was... And this isn't the only thing. I always say there were a lot of threads unraveling, but when you're a part of a community, it's easy to sort of turn the other way at questions or different things you have because, again, you get to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And then eventually I feel like, my own sexuality and understanding that and doing more of that really put me at an opportunity to say are you going to choose this community and this worldview, these ideas that you've been a part of, or are you going to choose yourself and this truth that you found and this love that you found? And so that's a lot of my first book was about that journey of leaving that community and finding myself and finding this love and building that life in a real special way.
Yes. And you're married to a beautiful, beautiful woman named Sammy.
She's everything. She's perfect.
Yeah.
And you know this. I'm not even lying.
Yeah. Yes. No.
Yeah.
She speaks truth.
Factually, she's just a perfect person.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, even just as you're talking and describing that experience of being in the church, I mean, I was like, oh yeah, cults. you leave your community. If you think something different or you question, that whole community's gone. Or the fear of they're going to kick you out, or the fear that they won't align with you. And that is kind of what I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a little bit of the split that happened when you decided to choose yourself. It was who is choosing me as well.
Totally. I think the fear, and I talk about this in Worth It, there are a bunch of things that I was afraid of that kept me sort of there, staying there longer than I may have liked or I wanted to, because I was afraid that I would lose friends and community. I was afraid that I would lose connection to this thing that felt like it had grounded me throughout my whole life. I was afraid people would like say mean things to me on the internet, or I was afraid people would say mean things to my parents who are, you know, going to be super loving and supportive of me. And every single one of them happened. Like that's the thing, is it's like all of the things I was afraid of. And that's the whole thing about Worth It, where I was like, it's not that, oh my gosh, I like chose myself and I chose love and then everything was great. I mean, everything is great. And every single thing that I was afraid of happened. I just was willing to experience those losses for what I thought might be on the other side of them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And to choose that, to be brave enough to choose that. And I think that's a part of life as well. Like, it's like you won't know that true love of choosing yourself without this fear. And even like letting go of something to bring something new in, you know? It's almost like the cycle of it.
And that's like the hard thing. And I wish I had any other message. But the reality is there's no other way.
Yeah.
You know, there's no other way to get so much of the good stuff of life than just through all of the hard things of life.
Yeah.
And that's not a sad message in my understanding of the world. I'm like, that's very hopeful. That's like
real.
It's like inspiring to me that I'm like, yeah, that is, we go through these things. We have to make these choices. Things get hard. And that is where I've found everything worth having. Like I'm not a person, and maybe people out there, but I've never been having like an incredible day where the sun is shining, flowers blooming, like, you know, just that like feel the rain on yours is like, you know, somehow coming over a loudspeaker and everything is perfect. And then that has been the day where I have grown the most. Like,
right.
Those days are super important because every day can't be this growth moment, but there's the reality of like, look back, everything that I have, like all of the evolution that I've experienced, all of the growth all these things that I hold so dear to my heart, I've gotten on days where I'm driving and crying in the car and being like, what is happening? Right? Those are the days that push me to get the things that now are the most important things in my life. And so I think it can't all be sun, you know?
Right. And that's what I think you really crafted. You know, I mean, who you're going to be in 10 years it's like you still evolve. You're still unfolding, as we all are. But I think right now in this current moment, you hold that idea of nuance and you hold the space of conflict very well. And also, I think you're a 7 on the Enneagram, correct?
Yes.
Which is very hard for a 7 on the Enneagram. So
I've had lots of therapy.
Yeah.
So
this is... But to integrate both and to hold both is such a challenge, I think, especially in today's world, in today's political climate, in today's social media, all the things. And is that, like, what was your inspiration for your second book?
Yeah. I mean, well, what's interesting is the inspiration for the second book comes from also some of the things that we were talking about earlier. So I had this experience of being in this religion, right, that has a lot of roots in fundamentalism. And being in that religion, I got a lot of messages that were like, hey, in this group, in this, to be a part of this community, here are the things you can and can't say. Here are the books you can and can't read. Here are the behaviors you can and can't have. And here are the things you can and can't say, do, look at, believe, whatever. And if you step outside of that, you no longer get to be a part of this community. And at a certain point, I said, that's not what I want. That's not what's for me. And so as I left and I found myself sort of in this progressive circle and in these social justice circles and working in the DEI space and doing all these things, I very quickly started to hear a conversation that was like, okay, here are the things you can and cannot say. Here are the books you can and cannot read. Here are the things you can and cannot do. Here are all the behaviors you need to. Here are the rules, or else if you step outside of this, you're outside of our community. And I was like, oh no. I was like, I just came from that. I was like, I just left that.
Yeah.
I don't want that. And I think there are a lot of things that sort of like these seemingly polar opposite groups have that I think sometimes humans just want. And one of them is this like love for binary thinking. Okay, so as long as I could be fully right, then someone can be fully wrong. And we have like both tricked ourselves on a lot of sides that there is a way to be fully right, which I don't believe there is.
Yeah.
Secondly, there's this desire for a need for external authority, right? So over here in my life, it was like, okay, my pastor is that. Everything my pastor says, I kind of go wherever. Over here, it's like your favorite influencer, your favorite author, whatever it is. Like we just need to make sure someone else is affirming our way of existing and that we can just kind of do whatever they say, right? I kind of joke that I have a lot of friends who left the church and they're like, I'll never, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I'll never be a part of a church again. And my pastor said this, I can't believe I just did it. But I'm like, you would, if Glennon Doyle told you to walk off a cliff, like you really might, right? Like, and that and that's not even shade to her because I think she's amazing, is doing amazing work. Right. But I'm like, she's just obviously the new external authority that you have replaced sort of these others with. And so I think post 2020, looking at the conversation in the social landscape and feeling like I'm seeing a conversation that is not allowing a lot of nuance and complexity to be held, felt familiar to me in a way I didn't like.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It felt like instead of waving a Bible saying, I have all the right answers, we were just like waving another set of books saying, I have all the right answers. And so I think that led me to think, okay, what's on the other side of cancel culture? What's on the other side of creating a place where no one can step out of line or they get sent out of community? What is driving us to sort of experience these things? And like, you know, I know we were joking earlier about being in a cult, but I tell this story in the book that I was watching this documentary. Do you ever just get to like the end of TV? You know, like, well, let's go. I don't know why I was watching this documentary. I just feel like I had reached the end of Netflix. But
there's nothing else. Yep.
Yeah. I was watching a documentary about flat earthers. Okay. So.
About what?
Flat earthers. People who believe the earth is flat. Yeah.
Wow. You did do it. I've never heard that. I love it.
Like, I feel like I was watching like something like Love is Blind. I don't know. You know, they just like things start. Yeah. Or maybe I don't know. I was in a place. But I'm watching this documentary and so the guy making the movie goes to a flat earth conference and he's like interviewing people in the lobby. You know, it's like the lobby of like a random Hilton hotel or something. And he's like interviewing people and he's saying, you know, what about science? And they're saying, no, if the earth was round, if I put a laser pointer, it would, I don't know, whatever. Like they're all getting the same things. I'm just like half watching it. And then there was this one interview where I was like, oh my God, this is the realest thing that has ever been said. The man making the documentary is interviewing this guy. He's like, hey, you know, science, the earth is round. And this guy kind of starts to give the same answers as everyone else, but then literally pauses and he's like, you know what? He's like, it's really hard to make friends. He's like, and I became a part of this group. And he's like, and I'm in the Facebook group and we check in on each other and people call me and we talk to each other and we show up for each other's birthdays. He's like, and I get to attend 2 conferences a year where we all meet up and hang out.
Wow.
And it's just like really important to me. And I was like, there's nothing you could say to that. This man was like, I don't care what I have to believe to have friends, to be a part of community.
Belonging.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't care. I don't think he cares whether the earth is round or flat. He's like, I finally have a group of people who will like check on me and who I can call. And so like, I'll abandon like science, you know? Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, it just kind of speaks to, I don't know when that was filmed, but I feel like in the last probably 10 years, we become very lonely. We become very isolated. We become so apart. And when you think about church, when you think about conferences, it is this physical gathering where we have a shared experience or a shared love for something. And that feels really good.
Yeah. It feels so good and so nice. And that's why we have people who will abandon sort of this critical thinking and thought or things they believe because they're like, too scary.
Yeah.
What if I need this Facebook group? I need these 2 conferences a year. I need this Sunday gathering. I need this place. I need this idea. I need this group. And so, hey, you say there's this flat, I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have people like you that were brave enough to also say, I might lose all of this and I still have to choose me.
Yeah. And I think, I think we need more people. And I think we need, ultimately, what I think we need is to create the kinds of communities that are not centered around every single shared belief.
Yeah.
I think we need to create the kind of communities where you can hold sort of nuance and different levels of understanding or evolution or these different things, right? You can hold sort of, I have these questions and I have these, but we still get to hold that community.
Yeah.
But when we live in the idea that community will be lost if we step outside of things, well, now we've cut ourselves off from critical thinking, which is very paramount to our existence.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting. I'm pulling a parallel of making mom friends because it's like there's so many different layers. You want the kid to get along. You want to get along with the mom. And you're just kind of like, you're like listening to what they're saying. And I know there's this one mom that I really like hit it off with. And then the more I got to know her, the more different our like kind of belief systems were. And I think it's something I need to retrain myself on constantly. I'm like, oh man, she believes in that, like I've lost, like we can't be friends,
Yeah.
And having to really kind of sit in like, no, I still can be friends with her. If I didn't know this, I still was very connected with her and had a good time, And so I think this brings a lot of, for me, it's political. It's a little religious, but political feels like the triggering that felt like, especially from 2020, was like, oh, you voted for him. Oh, you voted for him. Like that is the piece that I think we're still trying to like figure out, especially in an election year. Like it feels less to me, but it's still very present. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, and this is so much of why I wanted to write this book and wrote this book, because I feel like 2 things are true. I feel like we have lots of social and some internal pressure to draw lines in the sand, like very hard lines around things we believe. But the second thing I believe is true is I think most of us are deeply wanting there to be a way to disagree with someone and still be in relationships. And so a lot of us have these experiences on the internet where you're like, oh my gosh, Jen said something I don't like. And she, and not you, because I actually know you in person. Let's see it, Jen.
A different Jen.
Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
Is who I call Jen. I'm online and she says something and that I don't like, or she voted for someone, whatever. Then it's just like, okay, unfollow, block, over. It's a wrap. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's inconsequential. I've never met her and I never will. And then now I'll never see her on my timeline. And that is the 2-dimensional flat plane of the internet. That's how it works. I think what's hard is we have like our aunties,
Yeah.
Family.
Who,
like, picked us up from school and did our hair for prom and who we love, and we have all these shared memories, and we went to lake houses every summer, and now they're the person saying this thing that we don't like. And now now it's complex. It's not I can be like, oh, ew, Ryan Reynolds got married at a plantation, see ya, I'm like, right. These are my people.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we've trained our brains to say like, okay, there's one thing you can do and step outside the line, get out, I think it's created even more loneliness, right? Because now to be a part of my family, everyone has to match up with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, so I'm, you know, a peacemaker. So my worst fucking fear is somebody saying something to me on the internet that I said something wrong. And I think a lot of the social justice part left me really frozen in a lot of that. I'm like, well, I don't know I don't know if I'm going to say this or make my, it was that, remember the black post?
The black
Like
square?
Black square. I was terrified to do that. You know what I mean? And it's funny because this is social media. Like, this isn't actually like real world, but I'm also not big enough to be like, this is like my whole life. But there are people like you that have big followings and things, and it is scary. It is like people just want to freaking write whatever they want to write without thinking about it, without sitting with themselves.
Well, but the stakes are actually very high. And this is what I'm about. Like, I think social media, it's not real. It's not the real world. And it has very real world consequences.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who have, you know, we pulled up old tweets from people and they lost their job. You know, so there are very real world consequences. And I think the internet plays on a lot of these sort of inclinations that we have and lets them really run wild. And something you said that I think is true, and working in the DEI space in 2020 and 2021, like my fear was that we have created a landscape in where people are more afraid of being perceived as racist than they are of the fact that they might actually be racist.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, even what you were saying, it's like, okay, I just don't want anyone to like find something that I might. We don't have the space to say like, oh my gosh, like I just read that. Let me sit with that and see. Oh my gosh, is there a way I contributed to that? Or I didn't, because the stakes for making mistakes feel so high. And part of that is, I think, there's something I talk about in my book. I call it progressive amnesia. It's where like we learn something on Thursday, you know, and then by Saturday we're like, I can't believe you don't know this. You are creating violence in the world. You are ignorant. You're complicity. You're choosing to stick. You know, we're like going. I'm like, it's 2 days.
Yeah.
And the book you ordered on Amazon hasn't even arrived at your house yet for this topic that you like literally saw the 10-minute talk on, and I think part of that is like there is a lot of discomfort we need to navigate when we allow ourselves to sit with the nuance of our own journey, right? So what I want to do, and what I do sometimes, is I look at people who are sitting in evangelical churches who are like culturally white, loosely participating in Christian nationalism, but not radically enough to where they think they're a problem, non-inclusive of queer people, have women like up to a certain level of leadership, so you kind of think it's cool. But really, it's like you hope the lasers in the fog machine sort of like blind everyone from like the truth about their really day. I look at people who sit in churches like that, and I want to be like, you guys are stupid. Like, you're just dumb. You're idiots, and you're incapable of changing, and we need to tear down the system, and I don't care if you're in it. And anyone who like subscribes to that is just beyond repair, and that's that, right? You're just on the other side. I'm on the right side, you're on the wrong side, and you're stupid. And when I sit with the reality that, are they stupid or are they me 15 years ago?
Ooh.
Right? Like, when I remember, when I honestly let myself sit with the fact that I felt so safe in those chairs, that I felt so safe in those spaces. When I think about the fact that in high school, this is an actual truth. I remember praying to God and just being so thankful and being like, oh my God, thank you so much that my parents are Christian so that I don't have to go to hell. And I really thought that. Okay? I remember thinking like, gosh, like really asking questions. Oh, if men are such better natural leaders, like, but I feel like I want to like be a speaker. Like, why was I born a woman? I wrestle with these things.
Yeah.
Jed, in 2008, gay marriage was on the ballot in California. And I'm just coming to the reality. I was starting to have like gay friends, but still very much in this church. I short circuited in that ballot booth. Ugh. I literally like had a freak out because I was like, well, what if I vote no? But these people are my friends. But what if I vote yes and like I get struck by lightning? Because God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What if the rapture comes as I'm clicking yes, and then I get left behind, and then I've got. I mean, it was so. Ugh. And so my now living as this like proud queer Black woman living and doing whatever I want and have so much freedom and liberation from so many things. It would be a lot easier if I just disconnected myself from the version of myself that sat in those rooms and felt so comfortable and felt so cared for and felt so held. Like, you know, there was a God who loved me better because I was like an American Christian and I was gonna be okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I do that, it's easier.
Yeah.
You know, if I just look at them all like they're so stupid, then it's easier.
Yeah.
And, you know, something I say a lot, I believe, is like, the work never changes, right? The work never changes. The work is liberation, period, for all people. I think our approach to the work changes, though, when we are honest about the fact that we weren't born knowing what we know now. We've made mistakes. I've talked to youth rooms full of girls about purity culture. There's probably a girl right now in therapy talking about something I said to her, okay? And I have to deal with that. Like, I have to be honest about that. I can't just pretend like, oh, I'm some magical person who's always been on the right side of every line and now I'm gonna like burn down every building. And I'm like, no, those buildings were safe to me and they're safe to people in them. And that's not right, but it's true. And so now how do we approach the work differently, you know?
Yeah. I talk a lot about like people in the world being mirrors, like, and that's what came up for you as you're talking is like, they are mirrors for me and I'm mirrors for them. And whether or not they want to look in that mirror in you, that's their choice. But that's where the hard work is looking back and looking into that mirror and saying, I know that person. I've been there and I know what that feels like. And then we actually aren't separate at all. We are actually the same person in a different spot that is choosing maybe safety or choosing fear or whatever it is, but it's not actually so separate. And I think when you say like, oh yeah, I can take myself separate and I can judge and I say this is stupid, and then that puts me against them. But if I can use it as a mirror and see myself in them, then it levels the whole playing field of like, okay, what are we actually here to do? If it's not separate, if we're supposed to be together, if we could be more powerful together, what does that look like?
And I think we have to approach it differently, you know? And I always say, like, the worst thing about the internet sometimes is it gives us space to export our own emotional labor onto strangers. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, you know, I read comments sometimes and they say whatever they say, but what I hear is like, I'm hurting, so I want you to hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, because it's, you know, James Baldwin says, I imagine the reason people cling so tightly to hate is because they fear once the hate is gone, they'll be forced to deal with pain. And I think that I have a friend, we'll call her Jen. Okay, it's not you, but I'm looking at you and that's the only thing I could think of. And she similar to me, grew up in the church and had this whole thing, and then has since left and is like way out and is like, wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, complete change in her belief systems. And has this, a wonderful life, but her sister-in-law is still very much in that world. And her sister-in-law wrote a book. And it's like a book on like Christian dating. Oh. And it's not called this exactly, but it's like something like, she waits so he chooses. Or like some, like just like bad. Yeah. Okay, it's giving. Oh. And she was talking to me about it, and she was like so mad, like vein popping in the forehead, vein popping in the neck. She is like just so acutely angry at this, and I'm like, no, it sucks for sure. It's not a book I would read. But like, I mean, she was like so viscerally angry, and And we kept talking about it, and she's like, I know I'm being over the top. She was like, I hate it so much because I hate the version of myself that believed that. And I'm
Mary
like, yeah.
moment.
I'm like, period. And I'm like, it's hard for me to, the reconciling of thinking about that, the version of me that sat in these churches or in these spaces or did these things that now I would look back and make me cringe, make my skin crawl. I have to be able, like, I don't hate her. She was finding the best way she could to feel safe in the world. And that's what was handed to her.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, then I'm like, the work still doesn't change. We need the patriarchy, these narratives, these messages, like all of these things, they need to be gone. But when I think about the transformation that I've experienced, which is what gives me hope for everyone, by the way, but when I think about that transformation and I think about the ways in which it came, like I wasn't crying for hours in my therapist's office working through my own internalized homophobia and then come out and see that someone tweeted, by the way, God loves gay people. And I was like, oh, phew. Like, no, that's not like, it was like this long, very arduous journey that it wasn't like one day I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gay. And the next day I was like, oh, and I love that. You know? And so our expectations on change and transformation, I think have been warped, but I think we have a better shot at understanding them when we can look at our own journeys of transformation and find a lot of empathy for the versions of ourselves that found safety in ideals and messages that now we're like, oops, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that no one else hears that story that I told very loudly on a microphone.
Yeah, the empathy for self, right? And I do think when we can cultivate enough empathy for ourselves is actually harder than having empathy for other people. But then we can do it more easily. It can transfer more easily to other people.
Yeah. Well, okay, because I think this, but what do you think? Because you're... But I'm like, I don't know if we can have true empathy for people if we can't have it for ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think that's part, like the hatred of me or this part of me hates that in somebody else.
Yes.
Right? So then I hate this group of people and I hate that, whatever, right? So when you cringe and you're like, I fucking hate all these church people, it's that part of you, right?
Yeah.
And so and then we have a choice. We get to sit with that or we get to run away from that and say, yeah, that's right. Hate that, right?
Yeah.
And I do think there's like a cyclical collective, astrology is also very amazing, which I don't know, I know Sammy's into, but it does look at the patterns of things. And so, and like history and world events. And 2020 was a huge shift for all of us. And I think that it needed to be so far apart for us to really shake things up and saying these things aren't okay. And now I feel like we're in this rebuilding phase of like, okay, we know these things are okay, but we can't keep going on like this. Like, this doesn't actually feel good. It's not good for our nervous systems. We're not getting anything done. What does coming together look like?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the loudest voices we hear are not saying that, but I think the majority of people are feeling that. And again, like we were saying earlier, I'm like, it can't all be sunny, right? Everything worth having in my life is something that I had to cultivate after like loss or grief or fear. And so I do believe like, and because I'm just eternally optimistic and this is my 7th showing, but I'm like the opportunity we have, particularly in this country, to get and find and keep something actually worth having as a society community could come from this season we're in now that feels like not awesome.
Yeah.
From this place where we're like, okay, it's actually not, no, it's not great. And I've even seen myself take that journey, right? Like even looking back into 2020 and being like, okay, I understand all the ways that I was activated, especially as a Black woman. And I wouldn't change any things I did, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I saw myself feeling and exporting right? And not having kind of this like not having as much internal reflection, right? Because the internet felt like the space to do all the work. Where now I'm thinking like, oh gosh, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah. Well, I feel is it's the biggest connection that we have globally with each other, yet it's so disconnecting. So it's this false idea that we are so connected and we can have these conversations or we can have these fights on this fucking platform, but we aren't actually building relationships. We aren't actually connecting the way that we are like basic, like human, the way humans need to connect.
Yeah.
So it's a false reality in a lot of ways. Like it's a fake connection.
And the internet is like, again, nothing's all bad or all good, right?
Right.
And I think there are appropriate ways to place it. Like, oh, I've got a bunch of like rotten bananas on my counter. Like, guess where I'm gonna go to find out how to make banana bread out of them.
Yeah.
Or even these moments where we've seen it's putting our expectations appropriately on what the internet can do and who it is and who we are within the network of it. And so we gotta talk about is like being a pastor. Kind of, I had something that like I experienced that was super difficult in that when you're a pastor, there are only certain ways you're allowed to show up. So you kind of always have to be hopeful, and you kind of like, no one really wants to go to church where the pastor gets up there and they're like, hey, I'm actually like pretty depressed and I'm kind of disassociated the whole week and I really just don't want to be here and I'll see you later. Although I feel like churches might be better if that was the case.
Yes.
But I always had to like show up a certain way to keep my role in this community. And I think now I'm super sensitive to that, and I kind of I know it when I see it. And what's weird is I feel like that was true for pastors. I think that's true for like a lot of celebrities. You know what I mean? You like
influencers.
Someone that you like. But now I'm like, oh, it's true for almost all of us that we have created these online identities, right? Or like persona or just experiences. And now we feel like we always have to kind of be in that and we can't show up any other way.
Yeah.
Particularly in terms of like activism, right? Like where it's like, oh, well now I said online, like I've made a platform against standing against white supremacy. Like, do I still get to, talk to my grandma? Do I still get to like show up with my family on Christmas, even if they're like saying, you know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah.
We've created these split identities where I'm like, I don't think the role of the internet is to hold all of who we are. I don't even think it can. It can't hold nuance. It's not capable of it, and that's fine as long as we know that and then act accordingly. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
right.
And I mean, not to go down this rabbit hole, but sometimes I'll get a weird comment on something, and then I'll like go to the thing, and it's like 0 posts, 0 following, and I'm like, this might not even be a person.
Is this a bot? Yeah.
Like there's a very real chance like I'm going blue in the face, arguing with like
AI,
literally. And I'm like, this can like we have to we this isn't the way.
Yeah. Ugh.
I know.
What would you like to see more on social media, and how can people carry that into their own personal lives when it comes to this?
I think what I'd like to see more on social media is less. Like, just less.
Just less.
Sammy's my wife. We kind of had this thing. She like came up with this language to check ourselves on our like internet, our social media use. And it's just an internal question of asking ourselves, am I here for connection or am I here for consumption? Because there are some really cool, like I remember when I was in the closet and coming out, like I found some cool things online that would post resources or books, and I'm also a person who loves to cook, and there's like a ton of cool things I found. I've made like friends on the internet, and, kind of jokey things. Like it's fine, but once it goes from this sort of like connection of like, oh, I'm making these points or I'm this information into like consumption where I feel I can't stop.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, we need to log off, right?
Yeah.
Like, even with news, like I have a rule, especially this election year. I'm like, I will read something one time.
Yeah.
And I will only read and I will not watch the news, and I will read it one time. And then that's it. And then I know it. And then I can go and process that information. Right. I had just this last weekend, I was traveling with some friends to a festival, and after the press conference, Biden's press conference, I was like, okay, let me just read. Okay. I know. Okay. That's what happened. And he was like, he looked like he got hit by a truck. He was like, I stayed up till 3 a.m. just like reading think pieces and watching commentaries on the press conference. And I was like, why? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, you need to log off.
Yeah.
Like we all need to, as soon as we feel ourselves like start to like grab and like, I'm like, get off. Get gone.
Get off.
If you're having fun, keep going.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you're about to tell someone that they're
And I think it is that self-awareness that gets so hard to stay connected to, because the consumption becomes so powerful, because it becomes addicting, and again, because we're so separate, we have two different, I mean, we don't just have two different, but it feels like we have two different political views, and that's it, and then and they are so against each other, and so it becomes really hard. And I think the question is, what is the mirror being held up for me right now? And what do I need? How do I take care of myself first when it gets to that point? This is so random. And it's interesting because I'm on TikTok a lot, which I shouldn't be, but I saw the Trump get shot, and I was like, oh, and I quickly flipped through, and I said to myself, I don't know if that's true or not, because I've been trying to be more critical of TikTok with AI and everything, and I'm like, I'm sure I'll hear about it if it is true, but I had to be like, I don't know if that's true or not, and I can't hold that in what was happening, and this has nothing to do with like if I care about him or not, or if I voted for him or not. It just felt like
when you see something extreme, you're like, someone probably made this is AI.
Yes. And I'm like, I can't trust this right now because I'm here for freaking book talk. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure that I can hold that at a different place and a different time when I need to. But right now, I can't take what is coming at me as truth.
Yeah. And this is what's so tricky and hard, is because the more amount of time that we live in these spaces, the realer they get.
Yeah.
Whether they're real or not. And the perceived feelings of it get so real, and our ability. So I remember like this is another thing I just think. What's hard for me is, I'm not saying that we shouldn't like post about what we believe in or do these things, but I also think that sometimes we get carried away in making sure we stay in whatever community we've chosen, and whatever they're posting we kind of believe. And then it gives us a sense that we're doing something. That makes sense. So when everything started happening in Palestine, I remember seeing other people post online, and then I remember my exact next thought being like, I don't know anything about Palestine.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm being 1,000% honest, you give me a blank map of the world. I'm not even getting close. I'm not even going to be in the ballpark. And so I remember, and everyone's posting, and I had this moment where I was like, okay, everyone I see posting about it is someone who like, I think kind of thinks like me, or like we're on the same page about other things. So should I kind of just like start posting about it? And then I was like, what am I posting? And then I like had dinner. We had dinner with some friends that night, and we all talked about it for hours. And we're kind of like, do you know anything? Like, do you do you have any experience? And we're friends. And then like I ordered a book on Amazon, like 100 Years of War in Palestine, because I'm like, I think I would like to know something.
Yeah.
And then things started getting worse and worse. And I remember telling Sammy, like, I think there is a part of me that is like really wrestling with the hopelessness, and how it feels to just be completely helpless, like to go from uninformed to mildly informed, hopeless. And that there was something in that I don't know, there was something in that I was like, I think it might be important to feel completely hopeless and helpless. And the idea, again, this isn't saying we shouldn't share things we live in. We've seen a lot of social movements pick up a lot of speed because people share them on the internet, right? We saw that in 2020, we saw these things. But I remember just sitting with this tension for me of being like, is this my work in this? To do this? What do I believe that it will do? What do I believe I can do? What do I believe? You know what I mean? And so then I got like another book, and then, you know what I mean? I'm like, I can't do anything. And I think there's something in that.
Yes, there's healing
of feeling
in that.
And thinking that, and I feel like as in a generation of time where we have the access to every single thing happening in the world at every single time.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a more important time to get clear about what we can do, to get familiar with like hopelessness and what is that. And I think sometimes it's and the extreme thing, like even you seeing that movie, I don't have a place to hold. You know, I mean, there's so many things I see every day. I'm like, don't have a place to hold that. Like, especially on TikTok, I don't know how my algorithm got into like, because there's like heat waves everywhere, and like a bunch of people are finding dogs that have been like left up, and I'm like, I can't. Nope, I don't have a place for that. I can't hold that. Can't hold it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this reality that we're like, what is ours, and what is, and then my tendency to like want to craft something for social media that feels like helping, and sometimes it is. I want to be clear. Sometimes it is really important that we, but I think it's also really important that we have a check in between.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, okay, everyone's the pressure I felt was like, everyone's saying this, like Regina George wore army pants and flip flops, so I wore army pants and flip flops. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't want my global political understanding to just be narrowed down to like, everyone's doing this, so I'm going to do it. And again, not to say that you shouldn't be posting to things you believe in, but
there's the gray. And what I'm hearing is it matters what you post, yes, but what matters is the internal work that it's doing for you, right? Did that post make you feel different? Are you different because of that? Did that news make you feel different? Or like, even just sitting with the hopelessness, was that a real hard thing to do, but a very real thing that it's almost like you're mirroring what everyone else is feeling or what they're feeling in Palestine. You know what I mean? Like, all of it. And so none of it matters if this post is curated, if there's not internal work with that won't be shown on social media in a tiny square packaged perfectly.
Yes. And our ability to say like, okay, like even if I post these, what's the work in my city? Like what, you know what I mean? Like to be able to hold like our social location and our existence outside of the internet, because it gives us, I don't know, I think it just gives us this false sense of our ability to, I think, outpunt our average. And it's, you know what I mean? Like that we can be in, like, I don't think it's as possible as it seems. And so there's a lot of middle. Yeah. That I don't think these things are inherently good or inherently bad. Yeah. I think there's a lot of self-reflection that we get to bypass if we stay logged down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing you say too, is that in the social media, it becomes very black and white, it becomes very polarized. And so there is this need to stick to a side. There is a need to belong to something. And we get so distracted in that we forget to reflect. We forget to like, what is actually happening for me? What is happening for my family? What is happening in my community? How am I better for this? Right? Even if it's hard, how am I growing through this? And then where am I staying stuck? Or where is it paralyzing? Or where is it like, not necessarily moving you inward, but it's just staying here.
Yeah.
You know?
And what do I not know? You know, I
don't know anything.
Yes. And, you know, I mean, even with like reading the, you know, I read 2 books, you know, so far on Palestine, and trying to catch up to this history and this, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm okay with saying that. Like, I didn't know anything before this started. There's been so much oppression and these things happening in Palestine, and I didn't know any of it. And now I do. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm like catching up. But I think there's something to be honest of, like, you know, I think I wasn't born, you know what I mean? I wasn't born and taught as a child anything about, you know, what was happening in Palestine. And just being able to say, like, oh, I don't know what that is, or, oh, I didn't know that, oh, or I'm unfamiliar, or, oh, what is that term? Or, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Or when, you know, I did a gender, a sexuality, a queer identity training for an organization. And just checking in with everyone, you know, before we started. I said, how are we feeling? Do you have any questions? And someone says, you're going to tell us what all the letters mean, right? And I was like, yes,
I got you.
Totally, you know? And I just think it's a beautiful thing to be able to say, like, yeah, when people say LGBTQIA, not sure what some of those are.
Yeah.
And there's not a world where I could say, like, well, you should have already known that. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. L, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's walk through it, because this, you know, there's just so much beauty in someone being like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I mean,
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability and being able to ask the question. And I think, again, what I'm hearing you say is, like, then you become informed to then use critical thinking, to then do what you want to do with that, versus kind of like it, you know, on social media, it's like you take a grand wand and you're like, okay, most people that I believe in that are saying this, so this must be right. And so it catches up so quickly that we don't give ourselves enough time to be like, but I have so many questions, you know?
So many. It's a great time for some nuance, I think.
Yeah. And thank you for being a creator of that space. Thank you for your own journey. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for writing about it. Thank you for inviting people in to these conversations, because it is so powerful, and it does come from love. It does come from empathy, and it's so opposite of shutting people out. And so thank you for all that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, of course. Thank you. I know I'm not like on the book tour podcast or things, but thank you for coming on here.
Oh my gosh. I'll do anything you need, Jen.
And you can pre-order Do You Still Talk to Grandma now on Amazon?
Anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got Kindle. I got the Kindle Unlimited. I'm a book reader.
Kindle audio. It's coming audio.
Yes. Did you record the audiobook?
Yep. So
did you
if you're not sick of my voice after this,
Did you die at the end?
No, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. Can't imagine.
I drank a lot of tea and...
Yeah. Did you have to redo a lot of over? You just kind of flow with it. You're pretty good though.
I had there's like a woman there who's like, up, go back, you're losing a little energy.
Oh.
And she's like, they kind of fell flat. I'm like, but I'm like, come on. I was like born to talk. Yeah.
Just
a chatterbox. They were like, after the first, because it was multiple days recording, and after the first day, they were like, hey, remember to take it easy in your voice? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then at dinner, like with Sammy, and I'm like, I'm like, I can't. I'm like, I can't. Now I feel like I started talking, I can't stop.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Born to speak, born to write. We're so glad you're here.
Wow, Jen, you're the best.
Aw, thanks, girl. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes too to pre-order. And Brit, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you want to pre-order Do You Still Talk to Grandma, there's a link in the show notes. And thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time.